Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Board Game Brunch, the inaugural episode of Board Game Brunch, which is not like the other food-themed shows over on the Dice Tower, but is instead my solo Q&A show that I'm going to be doing here once a month, where I'm going to be taking questions live. I also took some questions in advance of the stream in case we needed to fill any time. And I will kind of talk to you all about whatever you want. This is your opportunity to get to know me because I'm new to the Dice Tower compared to some of the other folks around. And so I want you all to have an opportunity to get to know me. It will be a little odd not having co-hosts like Tom and Eric to play off of, although I am considering having guests on in the future. So if that is something that you would like to see, not just Tom and Eric, but maybe other people from the Dice Tower network or people outside of the network. If that's something that interests you, let me know, because I kind of get to do whatever I want with this show, which is kind of fun. So I'm happy that you all are here to join me. And okay, good. Audio and video seem good. That is good to know. The full text on my t-shirt. Here, let's see if I can move the camera down just a little bit. I am officially rocking the donut today. This is one of the shirts from the Flip the Table podcast. 1 year ago, yesterday, was the final episode of the Flip the Table podcast, which was part of the Dice Tower network. I'm sure some of you probably listened to that show. It was one of my favorites. And yesterday, since it was the 1 year anniversary of the final episode, it was officially Cheesy Games Day. That's what they declared. And so everyone was told to play cheesy games, old, obscure, you know, the stuff from the 80s and 90s and beyond. And I definitely did that yesterday, which I think if you saw when I scrolled the camera down, I actually have a box sitting over here, which I guess I could just show you all. But I got to play Star Trek: The Next Generation interactive VCR board game, A Klingon Challenge. This game, so like other VCR games from the 90s, it was geared towards children. It was definitely silly, and it was a lot of fun. It was, interestingly enough, easier to win than Atmosphere, which I've talked about in the vlog that you saw on the Dice Tower's YouTube channel already. If you haven't watched that vlog, you should, because the Atmosphere part alone is pretty funny. But I am going to pop out the chat so I can keep an eye on it a little bit more easily. If I can remember how to do that. Let's see, pop it out. There we go. Popping out the chat. I'm happy that you all are here. I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I know the Dice Tower doesn't often stream live on weekends, but since I have a normal 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 type job during the week, it's a little easier for me to do some content on the weekends. So I figured I would stream on a Sunday, and we'll see if this is something that people like and want to do going forward. So somebody said that they think having other podcast hosts on as guests would be cool. So yeah, if you know of somebody, and this is not like, I'm not necessarily looking for people who just want to come on and promote their own stuff, although obviously we'll give shout outs to wherever they come from. But I think this would be kind of neat to have just as a casual discussion Q&A type show. And if we could pick people from within the Dice Tower network, that would be neat, because I think a lot of people here on YouTube maybe just watch videos, and that's fine, but there might be some cool content creators who are doing just audio only content that maybe you would want to get to know. So hopefully I can pull some of them in. But I don't think I'll have trouble finding people that would want to do that. So Kabuki Kid asks, did I play it with a VCR or was it converted to a DVD or on YouTube? So it seems like most of these popular VCR games have had their videos uploaded to YouTube, and that is how we played it last night. We pulled the video up on my big screen TV in my living room, and that was pretty fun. Obviously the quality is, you know, it's square instead of widescreen, because TVs in the 90s weren't widescreen. But yeah, I do have the VHS tape in here. I will pull that out as proof. There was a good box noise there. Thank you, box. Let's see. Oh, also the components in this game are surprisingly like cool. I'll show you guys a couple of them. So first we'll show the VHS tape. There it is. I don't even have a VHS player. I don't have a VCR anymore. I don't own one. So could not do anything with that if I wanted to currently. There's a lot of different cards, but like each player gets a tricorder, and those are pretty cool. I'll grab the purple one because purple is my favorite color. So it looks like, oh, it's this fun little tricorder, right? Well, what's neat about it is during the course of the game, you're collecting isolinear chips, which are a thing from Star Trek. It doesn't matter whether you know that or not. But on the side of this, you'll see there's some little holes there. And when you get your isolinear chips, they actually slide in to your player board. So you have to collect 1 through 5. 5 would be the last one you would get. But I thought that was actually kind of neat as far as the components go. And then all of the players have a little character standee. And there is male and female for every single type of ranking officer, which I also thought was very neat. So you've got, for instance, let me see if I can find a couple of them. So you have the option to be a male or female of any of the ranks. Like here's the commanders. And then if you get put into a stasis field, so these are on little plastic standees, and if you get put into a stasis field, this goes on top of your character on the game board, this little like clear tube, and there's a couple of those. Like the components are pretty fun, which I was kind of surprised by. There is a spinner in the game as well as a die. The spinner is not great. I can show you that. It is, so it will either make you experience beige, which is a Klingon word for punishment, I believe. I should know that. So like the spinner, let's see if I can even, oh, it's a little better. Hey, that's actually not bad. Maybe after we played last night, we've loosened it up a little bit. It's not horrible. But yeah, the components are actually pretty good. For a kid's game from the 90s, I don't know what this retailed for originally. Honestly, it might be on the box somewhere if I take a look. But I was pleasantly surprised by this. And this actually kind of, oh, you want to see, no, okay. I was going to see somebody wanted to see the actual board, but I don't think that was what they were asking. This actually kind of leads into a question that I got in advance of this stream. So Adrienne sent in a question and said, what is it that you like about some of those old games like Heartthrob or Atmosphere or the McDonald's game or the Star Trek VCR Klingon Challenge game, and what separates them from other bad games of that era? I think that's a really good question, although I'm not quite sure I have a definitive answer to it. So, Star Trek VCR, oh my goodness. And why is my phone is now making noise? We're going to pause that. You could hear myself. That's creepy. I didn't even have the YouTube app open on my phone, and it started talking. Now that is closed. So the nostalgia factor is there for me, but most of these games that I've come to love now as an adult are games that I didn't actually play when I was a kid. So it's not entirely nostalgia. Although for one of the games in my collection, it most certainly is, and that is the Omega Virus, which is a Squawk Box game from the 90s that I got for my birthday in 1992, and I still own my original copy. In fact, I asked Justin Jacobson of Restoration Games if the Omega Virus was their big Gen Con announcement. And I obviously do not expect Justin to give me any insider info. He told me definitively that it is not the Omega Virus. But I've heard that Justin has lied to people about things like this in the past. So I want to like push it out of my mind and not have hope, because I really want them to bring back the Omega Virus. But he said no, so I'm like, okay, it's not that. But I also know he's lied, and I'm not, for the record, I'm not faulting him for lying at all. Like, I 100% believe he should be lying and keeping whatever it is a secret. But I still kind of hope it's the Omega Virus. So we'll see. I'm going to scroll back up in the chat a little bit. Someone asked, Crystal, when did you get into board games, or who got you into the hobby? So like most people, I did play board games as a kid. I didn't get into hobby games per se when I was younger. I didn't do Dungeons and Dragons or anything a little more hefty, I should say. I had a lot of the girly type games when I was a kid, like Mall Madness, Dream Phone. I had a few other like random weird ones. I bought a lot of board games when I was a kid. I had the Ren and Stimpy cereal game. I don't remember if that's the formal name, but basically it was shaped like a giant box of cereal, and you pulled out pieces that made up comic strips that had Ren and Stimpy on them. But there was a thing where if you pulled out all of the wrong, like you didn't pull out your pieces, you pulled out this other comic strip. It was the mind eraser or the memory eraser. And if you completed that strip before your own, then it said something in the game like, you have to put the game away and this game never happened and nobody wins. It was funny. I had a dexterity game called Arch Rival, which I actually heard Z mention in one of their streams or top 10s or something within the past few months. And I was surprised to hear someone else talk about Arch Rival. I think it's actually a really good dexterity game that I don't believe is in print anymore. And I think somebody could theoretically bring that back pretty easily. But yeah, played all of that when I was a kid, little, whatever games, mass market stuff. And then in 2007, when I was still living in Kansas City, in Missouri, I was working at a place and I had a coworker who said, hey, our other coworker has some people over to his house to play games on whatever night of the week. You should come and join us. And I said, that sounds like fun, sure. So I went over to his house and promptly got taught games like Race for the Galaxy, Power Grid, Ninja Burger, Puerto Rico, what's the programming game that's really popular? Why is my mind blanking right now? It gets too big when you have too many players. You all know what I'm talking about, probably. I haven't played it in a while, so that's why I'm not remembering. But and Betrayal at House on the Hill was another big one. And then the biggest one for me was Runebound, 2nd edition, which if anybody's played Runebound, they know it's a very big and epic game, and it takes a few hours to play often, especially at its highest player counts. Those were kind of the first forays into modern board gaming for me. And those were what solidified my love of board games. So when I moved to Las Vegas, I lost that group and I lost access to all of those wonderful games. And so I eventually started slowly building up my own collection. I've ended up purchasing most of the games that were part of his collection, and now they're part of mine. I was very excited when Fantasy Flight brought a 3rd edition of Runebound out, because 2nd edition of Runebound is really hard to find. Kabuki Kid, Robo Rally, that is what so Nick said it first. Robo Rally is what you guys were talking about. But those were like the types of games that I got introduced to, and I'm so happy that I did. My buddy Ben, shout out to him, who I have not seen now in 10 plus years, but he's the one who really got me into the hobby, and I wouldn't be doing any of this if it weren't for him. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's kind of how I got my start. I started building my own collection. I started having people over to my house here in Las Vegas, and then I started going to meetup groups here in town, and now I run a meetup group here in Las Vegas. We meet once a week, and that's pretty fun. By being in charge of it, I don't actually do anything aside from manage the meetup page and make sure new people feel welcome, which I sometimes do a little too enthusiastically. I'm sure none of you will be surprised by that. But yeah. All right, I'm going to scroll back up on the chat again. Someone asked if I made my own background. No, this is actually a thing I bought on Amazon. I don't know if I can even, I have a green screen underneath it. It's like material. It's like this weird plasticky material. And I just bought it on Amazon and put it up on the wall so that way there wouldn't be a green screen behind me anymore, because that was a mistake. The one time I did that when I was on with Eric, the green screen, not a smart decision on my part. Okay, let's see here. Other questions. Crystal, what are the top 3 things you want people to know about you? That is a really good question, Mad Bonna. Okay, if I wanted people to know 3 things about me, I would say that I am incredibly passionate about the things and people that I love. I tend to run emotion-wise at extremes. So I'm either very, very happy or I'm very, very upset. And sometimes if I do ever get angry, it's kind of a little bit intense. So I have to try and control that. I have a little bit of a temper, although obviously you're never going to see that here. At least I hope not. Don't make me mad, chat. So I guess that's all kind of number 1. Number 2, my goal in life is honestly just to be happy, which seems kind of cliche, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that like some people have very specific aspirations relating to their career or their family, and all of that is wonderful. For me, I just want to do stuff that makes me happy. And often that ends up being doing things for other people. And that tends to be where I am the happiest, is when I'm helping out other people. So I try and do charitable stuff pretty frequently. You know, I donate blood. I just donated blood last week at work. I try to help other people within the board game industry however I can as well, because it makes me feel good. I kind of subscribe to the thought that I think it was Joey on the TV show Friends who said there is no such thing as a selfless good deed. And I kind of believe that, because I love to do things for other people, but it always makes me feel so good to do it that I feel kind of selfish when I do things for other people, because I'm partially doing it because it makes me feel good inside. So I know Phoebe in the show was trying to prove to Joey that there are selfless good deeds, but I don't know. There probably are. I'm sure that there are. But for me personally, I get a lot of happiness out of helping other people. So that's important to me. And number 3, let's go a little more lighthearted. I love my dogs. And you guys have seen my little dice buddy with my 3 dogs in it. Of course, none of my dogs are nearby at the moment for me to show you. I could call maybe and see if she'll come up here, but I don't want to yell. So I did move my microphone farther away, so hopefully I'm not too loud today. But somebody said I should have the Brothers Murph on the stream. That is definitely a possibility. They are part of the Dice Tower Network because of their involvement on Board Game Breakfast, and I bet they would love to do that with me. Someone asked if I've ever listened to the Star Trek books on tape. And you know what? I'm very not very knowledgeable about Star Trek books, and I've heard nothing but good things about a lot of them. Imzadi specifically has been called out to me as something I should read, and a few others. So yeah, I wish I had more time to do all of the things I want to do, including reading a lot more books. But that, I think, as hobby board games have taken over my free time, I read less now, which is kind of sad. I used to be a big reader. I was an English major in college, so reading has always, although I was a creative writing major, not a literature major, but I do enjoy reading quite a bit. So someone else said that they hope that Restoration Games is bringing back 1313 Dead End Drive. That's from the 90s, which might be too new for them to focus on. Is that the one that has kind of like a 3D looking house that you're exploring? I've never played it, but I think I know what you're talking about, and I've heard good things about that. Someone says, how about My Little Pony, the board game? I don't know if I know that one, so I don't think I've played it. I did get to try My Little Scythe at Dice Tower Con, though. Although it's funny, Eric was talking in the podcast to Tom about how he was so mad that a game got essentially ripped from his hands by Tom on Sunday. And I don't remember which game it was for him now. But the same thing happened to me. Tom had to pack up My Little Scythe when I was in the middle of it because I waited until Sunday to play it. But I actually really liked it. And fun fact, have not played Scythe. So My Little Scythe was my first foray into Scythe world. But now I kind of do want to play regular Scythe as well. Let's see, scrolling down. I know I'm way behind in the chat. I apologize. I'm trying to keep up with you all. But you are having some awesome conversations here in the chat. So I'm glad you all are able to talk to each other. The modern board game that really perked me up and made me get into the hobby. I don't know if this question was asked before I talked about the stuff from 2007, but I think Runebound is definitely the one that I point to. Runebound and Race for the Galaxy, probably. Race for the Galaxy, a lot of people kind of like to make, well, not make fun of it, but they say bad things about it because they claim that the iconography isn't great. And I learned it when I was new to games, and I don't remember struggling with it. Now, that's not to say nobody would struggle with it, but I think that the talk about how difficult the iconography is a little bit overblown. So I would say if you are a person who has not played Race for the Galaxy, there's a reason that game has been around and popular for almost 15 years now. So definitely give it a try. I do, I've played Roll for the Galaxy as well, but Race for the Galaxy is still my fave. And which is weird because I love rolling dice, but I don't know, there's something about Race's cleanness and the lack of randomness as far as like the dice can really screw you over in Roll for the Galaxy. So I think I like Race better for that reason. All right, what's my favorite roll and write game? That is a tough question because I've been playing a lot of roll and writes lately. I did download the Gons Shown Clever app now that it is available on iOS and Android. And I've played a lot of the solo game of Gons Shown, but I feel like I'm going to burn myself out on it pretty soon. Like I'm already kind of like, ugh, but I still can't. I have not gotten a higher score than 260. And I want to get closer to 300. I've seen a lot of people do it, but I can't seem to crack the code. My favorite roll and write, though, honestly, I think it's right now a toss-up for me between Knock Mall and Kribbeln, which I can type into the chat or I can just spell it. I guess it's Kribbeln. It's another German one, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking or playing Kribbeln in the States because it isn't over here. It's pretty easy to order from Amazon.de, but I really like it. I taught it to Danny and Derek at Dice Tower Con, and they really enjoyed it as well. But it seems like I don't think I've found a roll and write game I don't like yet, aside from one. I'm not a huge fan of Avenue, which is technically a flip and write game. I know a lot of people love it, and I'm not as keen on it. So that's kind of the only one. But most roll and writes that I play, I tend to like at this point. So I blame Suzanne for my newfound love. Well, it's not really new, I guess. I've had Quicks for 2 or 3 years, but I've definitely been picking up more roll and writes lately. All right, let's look at the chat. What is my favorite game to teach? So I end up teaching a decent number of games. Me and one other person in my game group tend to be the ones that bring a lot of games and end up teaching them. My favorite game to teach. That's so tough. I'm gonna have to glance down to the lower level of my house to try and figure out, like, if I'm pulling out a game to teach people all the time, what is it? Honestly, I think it might be Hanami Koji, which I know Deepwater Games is releasing here in the States around Gen Con, but I have the older edition from, I think it's Emperor S4. And it's 2 players only, so obviously teaching a 2-player game is a little bit easier than teaching a multiplayer game. But it's really easy to teach, and the game is really interesting, and everyone I've taught it to really loves it. But honestly, I'll teach just about anything. I always feel like I'm doing a bad job at teaching games. Most people say I'm doing fine, although I think people tend to be nice and would say that even if I wasn't. But I think I'm more critical of myself and my teaching skills than other people are. When I'm teaching games, I try to really stick to, okay, first explain what the goal of the game is, because if you're explaining how a game works without people knowing what the end goal is, sometimes it can be a little bit more unclear. So start with the goal of the game, then explain the mechanics after that. And when I remember to do that, that tends to help. But I tend to lean a little too hard on the rule book sometimes, unless I know a game really well. So let's see. I think I saw another question. That was, oh, okay. This actually kind of ties into that. So somebody asked what my favorite game is that does not get a lot of recognition or is under the radar. I would actually say Medieval Academy is probably that. And it's a game that I love to teach as well. If you haven't played Medieval Academy, it is a very light drafting game. And I guess you would kind of call it area control, although there isn't a map per se. There's a bunch of different boards. And you draft cards, and then once everyone has drafted a hand of cards, you play the cards, and based on the numbers and the types listed on the cards, you move yourself up on different scoring tracks. And then at the end of specific rounds, different boards score differently based on who is in what place on them. And that's it. You go through a number of rounds, and then you get victory points based on a number of different considerations. The theme of the game is that you are a squire training to be a knight. So some of the like one of the boards has a dragon that you're fighting. One has the princess that you're trying to win the favor of. One is your donations to the poor. And if you're the lowest on that track, you get negative points, that kind of thing. So you're trying to have a well-balanced life as a squire. I love it. I love Medieval Academy, and I don't see it getting played very many places. I believe it came out in 2014. I could look that up, but I'm just going to guess, and I think that's close to right. So I love it, and it's really light, and it's easy to teach, and it's fun. And there's some of the boards are double-sided, and one side is a little more in-depth or strategic than the other. So you can actually choose which side you want to use, and that's kind of neat. So that way, if you want to teach it to people who are less experienced gamers or more experienced, you have some options there. Apologies, I need coffee. It's still early for me. Okay, good. So somebody did confirm probably a while ago that that 1313 Dead End Drive was a board with 3D booby traps going off. That sounds cool. I would love to play it. Yeah, that's awesome. Mac asked, what's your favorite Weird Al non-parody song? Oh, Mac, that's such a difficult question. So you all know at this point that both Eric and I are huge Weird Al fans. I have seen Weird Al in concert more times than any other artist. I think I tried to figure out how many times I've seen him, and I think it's either 9 or 10 times that I've seen him in concert. I just saw him twice within the past 6 months as part of his ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised vanity tour, where he went on tour and actually played a lot of his original songs instead of his parodies, which are what he's kind of more known for. But what's interesting about Weird Al is he's a very, very talented musician. And a lot of people only hear his parodies, which that is a great... His parodies show off that he's able to emulate the styles of a bunch of different artists. Like when you can pretend to be Michael Jackson and then Eminem and then a rapper or a chameleonaire or, you know, Madonna, all in the same show, like that's already really impressive. But his original songs are actually very clever as well. And I'm delaying right now because it's hard to pick a favorite. I have always loved Your Horoscope for Today, just because it's really silly. I also really like, I love Albuquerque, which the funny thing about his song Albuquerque, he put it on one of his albums as kind of a joke. It was his way of, you know how like when you used to buy a CD way back in the day, back before everything was digital, and you would almost never listen to the last couple of tracks. You'd usually, unless maybe you're not like me, but for me, and I think most people, you would listen to the first few songs way more often than you would listen to the last few songs. And so on this CD, as the very last song, he put a song called Albuquerque, which is 11 minutes long and is a giant, ridiculous story about a trip to Albuquerque. And that's it. It's very silly, and he thought no one would listen to it or that everybody would hate it. And it has ended up being one of his most popular and most requested songs when he goes on tour. But obviously, since it's 11 minutes, that's hard to do live. And I now am lucky enough to have heard him do it twice. He did it as the encore for a tour back when that album first released. And then this year, he did it in the midst of some of the sets of his tour. And I got to see it again. And that was pretty cool. So I was very excited. Somebody else said Genius in France. That is also a really good one. Hardware Store, also good. I used to have the middle part of Hardware Store that moves really, really fast. I used to have that memorized. I don't anymore, but I should maybe try and relearn it. Matt asks, do you ever play Star Trek games like Star Trek Ascendancy with non-Trekkies? The answer to that is most definitively yes, because most of my friends and most of the people in my game group aren't Trekkies. I am actually, of my kind of group of friends, I'm really the only one who is pretty much hardcore into Star Trek. So almost all the people I've played that game with are not Star Trek affiliated people. Most people have some ancillary knowledge about Star Trek, even if you've never watched it. if you say Klingon, people know that Klingons are from Star Trek. So that's something that people are familiar with, but most of the people I've played it with are not actually big Trek fans, and they do tend to like it. Ascendancy, for those who are not aware, is my #1 game of all time. I love it. I do recognize that there are some parts of it that people don't like, and that's completely fine, but I love it. So what are some of my favorite bands, authors, books, and movies? Whoo, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, let's go maybe one of each. For favorite bands, other than Weird Al, obviously, I would say either Hall & Oates or Huey Lewis and the News, or Fiona Apple. Okay, I'm naming 3 apparently. Authors, I really like Philip K. Dick and a lot of his stuff, which a lot of his stuff has been getting turned into movies and TV shows. Books, his Dark Materials trilogy from Philip Pullman, which is the BBC is turning into a TV series soon, and I'm very excited about that. Favorite movies. My favorite movie of all time is Lost in Translation. And I would say my #2 is Adaptation, which a lot of people don't like because it's a Nicolas Cage movie. And I'm one of those people who really likes Nicolas Cage. He has been in some horrible movies, for the record, but he's amazing in Adaptation. He plays twin brothers in it, and the way he plays off of himself is really, really impressive. So I love Adaptation and Lost in Translation. I will say those are my favorite. Do I like escape room games? I do like escape room games. The Exit series is my favorite, with Escape Room the Game coming in at #2 as a series, and then Unlock coming in at #3, and then Deckscape coming in at #4. And I believe those are the only systems I've played escape room games in. Exit to me is hands down the best. I think that they're able to do more clever things because they make the components destructible. I think it's just more, and honestly, I know a lot of people love Unlock, but the hidden number thing, I can't get behind it. To me, like that, in a real escape room, finding a hidden thing feels different than, oh, I didn't spot this tiny number on a card, therefore we've been stuck for 15 minutes and didn't realize it. Because we would sometimes scour the cards and just not see it. And I guess in theory, the same thing could happen in a real escape room, but I don't know. The Unlock series just doesn't feel as good to me. So I still like them, but yeah. Someone said it's still early. What time zone are you in? Hawaii? No, I'm in Las Vegas, which is on Pacific time. It is now 10 a.m. But I was up late last night experiencing Beige in the Klingon Challenge board game. Beige. So no, I have some friends and actually, here's a fun thing. Yesterday, so there's a lot of local theater here in Las Vegas. I know most people that come to Vegas are only staying on the Strip, and they think that's all Vegas is. But Vegas is a very large city with a lot of very cool cultural stuff. And yesterday, I went to a show at a local theater. The show was called Quest World, and it was a live interactive board game show. And it was so much fun. It was essentially an audience participation based live action role playing game. So they brought people up from the audience. They had a large character sheet, and the character kept dying or changing. So they were able to switch out what audience members were controlling the character. But then they had a cast of people who were playing these creatures and NPCs that the person would run into, a lot of cool props, some magic. It was done by the same people who put on the Absinthe show here in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, if any of you have been here and seen that, which Absinthe is kind of Cirque du Soleil-esque, but dirtier, definitely adult themed. This was not. Quest World was family friendly, but it was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of involvement for kids that were there, but it was great for adults too. I actually recorded some video footage while I was there, so if you all would be interested in seeing some footage of that, I could talk to Tom and see if I could put that up on the Dice Towers channel, because I believe it was just a local production. They were only running for 3 days. I don't think it's traveling anywhere, but honestly, I think they should, because it was really fun. So I really enjoyed it. Someone asked, What's my favorite race to play in Star Trek Ascendancy? Oh, that's tough, because I don't like to be that person that takes like the safe, boring race in any game. Like if you've got a bunch of cool races, I don't want to be the humans normally. I want to be something fun and interesting. But that being said, I really do like being the Federation when I play Star Trek Ascendancy. I do enjoy playing as the Ferengi as well. I think that their way of their engine building is very different from the other races, which is interesting. And I'm very curious to know how the two new races are going to play. At Gen Con, I think, or sometime this year, Gale Force 9 is releasing two more races, the Vulcan High Council and the Andorians. And I'm very curious to know, especially how the Vulcans are going to play. Vulcans are supposed to be non-emotional and non-confrontational generally. Well, at least now in their history. So I'm very curious to know what those are going to be like. I have a feeling I'm going to like the Vulcans, but who knows? I haven't seen much about them yet. So am I excited for the new Deep Space Nine Ferengi game? I'm cautiously excited about that one. I saw a little bit about it a while back and went, oh, that sounds interesting. But since most Star Trek board games tend to fall kind of flat, I'm not trying to get my hopes up too high about that one. If somebody knows the full name of that you can feel free to post the name in the chat. But yeah. Can I rank all of the Star Trek movies? Probably not off the top of my head. But I do like some of the Next Generation ones that other people don't like. I like them more than them. Of the Next Generation ones, Insurrection would be my favorite, followed by First Contact, followed by Nemesis, followed by Insurrection. As far as the original series movies, I don't know how I can mix them all. They would probably be mixed, but Voyage Home is probably my favorite. I mean, who doesn't like the whales? Gracie and Frank? Frank and Gracie? Is that the other whale's name? I know Gracie is the female whale. I can't remember the male whale's name, but there's too many original series movies. I'm not going to rank all of them. The first one is tough to get through. I will admit that it's slow. Wrath of Khan is obviously amazing. And it kind of does stick to the even-numbered ones are usually the better ones, and the odd-numbered ones are often the lesser, at least for the original series movies. If I had the choice of an upcoming Fantasy Flight Games release, another Runebound expansion, or Legacy of Dragonholt expansion, ooh. So, like, I have to pick one of those three, and the other two aren't going to exist? Because my heart, okay, so it depends. I have been desperately wanting, I get it, it's those two from Fantasy Flight. I see what you're saying. Okay, so if the Runebound expansion included a new map, 100% I would choose the new Runebound expansion, because that is the thing that I am missing most from Runebound 3rd edition. Because Runebound 2nd edition, the expansions came not only with new heroes and new cards and new items, but they came with entirely different boards as well. I think you still had to have the 2nd edition base game to play them, but they came with a new board with new terrain and new obstacles and new paths to take. And that's what's missing for me from 3rd edition. Everything else, I like the token flipping system over dice rolling, which I didn't think I would like, but there's one map every time. All of the quests are in the same spot. You have to wander through the same areas. I want another map. So if it was a map, Runebound. If it wasn't a map, if it was just more heroes and components for Runebound, then I'd go Legacy of Dragonholt, because I love Legacy of Dragonholt. Nikki Valens created something magical with that game, and I desperately hope they're working on more stuff, whether it is in the land of Terranoth or somewhere else. If they could take that system and put it elsewhere in space or, in a different world entirely, I think that would be really cool. So I would be excited to get either one of those, truthfully. All right, I'm going to take a drink of coffee. Someone asks, how do you feel your life, my work, environment, etc., has driven me toward playing games and now working in the games industry? I I don't know. Honestly, I've always played games, whether it's board games or video games. Gaming has always been a part of my life. So I think it was always going to be part of my life regardless. And I didn't necessarily have aspirations to be in the games industry at all. But as I got more into hobby gaming and I started consuming other people's content and loved it, Flip the Table is a great example of that. I would listen to Flip the Table, their podcast, and say, this is so funny. This is so amusing. This is so entertaining. I love it. And I would look for other board game podcasts and I'd be like, wow, all of these people they're sitting in a room with their friends and they're talking about the thing that they love. And I was like, I could maybe do that. But I kind of just pushed that thought aside for a while. And then I had a realization one day and I said, wow, there's a lot of women who play board games, obviously, and there aren't any podcasts that are only women. And it seemed a little weird to me, and it seemed a little sad to me. And this was, a few years ago now. And I was like, what if, like I can listen to podcasts with anybody on them and enjoy them and appreciate them. I go, but what if there's somebody out there who's new to the hobby and they say, oh man, I love board games. Let me see who else is out there talking about board games. And if they didn't see anybody like themselves creating content about the thing that they loved, would there be somebody who would say, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to like this thing. Nobody like me seems to be talking about this. So maybe it's not for me after all. And maybe they would be dissuaded potentially. And rather than complaining about the fact that there were no podcasts that were hosted entirely by women, I decided to do something about it. So I started talking to Ambi and Cassidy on Reddit as part of a Reddit thread, and we created a podcast together. And now there's a bunch of podcasts that are all by just women. And there's more LGBT friendly podcasts. There's more diverse podcasts as far as race and all these other things. And it makes me so happy because I feel like there are people out there who are board gamers who don't know it yet. And if they see themselves in another person who's enthusiastically talking about games, then they might go, oh, this is for me. This is for people like me. I'm going to come in and I'm going to play some games and it's going to be awesome. And so I literally I got into content creation because this is so cliche, but I wanted to be the change, or I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in the world, essentially. So I wasn't going to complain about a thing. I did something about it. And when we started the podcast, I didn't have aspirations of doing a lot of video content or ever joining the Dice Tower formally, but anything that I've gotten involved in my life, I kind of go, crank it up to 11, so to speak. And I love to talk about the things that I love. And I hope you all can see that in the way that I talk about games and other things. It's a passion for me to tell people about the things that I love, not just in media format, but in my daily life. Like if I did a thing that I love, and then my friends are going to hear about it because I just love to tell people about stuff. So I think it was a natural progression for me. I obviously still have a regular 8 to 5 type job. I'm not making board game content full time, nor is it very lucrative for me, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be. I will admit I miss some of my free time that I used to have because I don't have a lot of it anymore, but that's okay. So I'm going to scroll back up a little bit because I've gotten behind again. Apologies for the tangent. Let's see. Oh, somebody else. Oh, Ambi says she feels the same way about the hidden numbers and unlock. So that makes me feel good. Yeah, somebody said Quest World sounds like fun. It was awesome. I really liked it. I hope I'll talk to Tom and see if I can put the footage up on the YouTube channel so you all can see it. It's pretty silly, but it was neat. Question, what is my feeling about the paywall that the current Star Trek series is behind? Do I feel it is hurting its potential viewership? I'm very torn here because I think that the money, okay, so for those who aren't aware, let me explain real quick. Star Trek Discovery is the current running Star Trek TV show, and CBS is producing it, but it does not air on regular CBS. It airs on their online-only streaming service called CBS All Access, and you have to pay a monthly fee to join it. When they first announced that, I was very angry about it. I do believe, as you asked, that it is hurting Star Trek's viewership. But I also believe that it is helping its production quality, because a normal network TV show isn't getting money directly. Star Trek Discovery, because people have to subscribe to view it, I believe has a higher budget as a result of being behind the paywall. I think they're spending more money on this show than they potentially would have if it were on their regular network. And so I think the show is better for being behind the paywall. Am I happy about the paywall? No, of course not. I want everybody to watch Star Trek. And this series is a great starting point for people who've never watched Star Trek before. You don't have to have any prior knowledge or experience with Star Trek to jump into Discovery and love it. It is very wonderful. It is reminiscent of a lot of modern TV shows in some wonderful ways. And the cast is absolutely brilliant. They got renewed for season 2. So we've got that, but if more people don't watch it, I don't know at what point CBS would theoretically pull the plug. It is a show that I hope runs for many, many seasons. It tends to be that most Star Trek series start off kind of weak. A lot of TV series are like that as well, not just Star Trek ones, and then tend to get really good over time. But season 1 of Discovery, in my mind, is the best first season of any Star Trek show ever. And that is, Deep Space Nine is still my favorite Star Trek series, but Discovery's first season is far better than the majority of Deep Space Nine's first season. So I think that they have a lot of expectations placed on them because of having such a good first season. There were some decisions, some plot points, and a couple episodes that I didn't enjoy as much, but overall it was great. And so if you haven't checked it out, CBS All Access does have a free trial option like most streaming services, and all of season 1 is up because it's already out. So if you want to binge watch it, you could, and then you should come and tweet at me, tell me you did that, because I love to hear about people enjoying Discovery. It makes me really, really happy. People were talking about the whales from earlier. George and Gracie. George was the other whale's name. That's probably why I couldn't remember it, because that's an odd name for a whale, although I don't know what a normal name for a whale is, so that's probably a silly thing to say. If the Brothers Murph asked me to commit to play a game at Gen Con and all they told you was it was called Twister Legacy, would I commit to it? Well, I'm not going to be at Gen Con, so I wouldn't be able to this year. But let's say, hypothetically, I was going to Gen Con and they have a thing called Twister Legacy. Would I commit to playing it? Yes. Would I, in the back of my head, be like, oh gosh, I'm going to be the first person eliminated? Yes. I am not that flexible. I feel like even regular Twister would be a stretch. At this point. But Twister Legacy, sure. I'll give it a try. And honestly, the Brothers Murph, I love Nick and Mike so much. They come out to MeepleCon here in Las Vegas, the convention that I help run here, and I've gotten to hang out with them and play a bunch of games with them. And honestly, if they asked me to play just about any game with them, even one that I claim to hate, I would do it, because those guys are the best. So let's see. So I mentioned the new races for Star Trek Ascendancy are Vulcans and Andorian. My thoughts on using Federation member races instead of new races like the Dominion or the Breen. Ooh, that's a good question. So he's saying, they're taking races that in the Star Trek canon are part of the Federation, meaning they're partners with the Federation, instead of enemies of the Federation. And honestly, I think the Dominion is a no-brainer for Ascendancy. The Dominion expansion for fleet captains, I've heard, is the best expansion for that game. I've gotten to play fleet captains once. I have not gotten to play with the Dominion. But the Dominion is such an interesting group in Star Trek, in the TV shows. It seems like a no-brainer to do the Dominion in Ascendancy, and they haven't. Maybe it's coming. I don't know. I'm just glad that Gale Force 9 is still continuing to put out content for Discovery, and I will take all of it. So I think that's great. How do I deal with my pets when I go to a gaming or Star Trek convention? So my husband and I both like to travel, but we tend to travel separate from one another a lot of the time. He plays Magic the Gathering and he goes to a lot of Pro Tour and Grand Prix events. So often we try and coordinate our schedules. So when he's traveling to a Magic event, I am home and can watch the dogs. And when I'm going to a board game convention, he's home and can watch the dogs. We do try and take at least one big vacation together every year as well. We do like being around each other, but he's not as into board games as I am, and I don't play Magic the Gathering only because I'm really bad at it, and he's really good. So we usually, one of us is home watching the pets while the other is traveling. If we do both have to be traveling, or if we're traveling together, I have a friend here in town who kindly either will dog or house sit for us. We don't like to take them to a kennel or a boarding place if we don't have to. Someone asked, Brass Lancashire or Brass Birmingham? I have no idea. I do know that what those games are. They're Martin Wallace games. I know that they exist. I know that they're different. I've not played either, and I probably won't. I don't think those games are my style, but that's not to say I wouldn't be willing to try them. I guess if the Brothers Murph asked me to play, I would play them. But I can't pick because I know nothing about either one or the differences between them. Let's see, scrolling down some more. Somebody else agrees that Discovery is the strongest written Star Trek show. It is. It's wonderful. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay? Nay. I love pineapple. I love pizza. Don't put them together. Keep them apart. Keep them apart. Fruit. Okay, I'm weird about cooked fruit. So while Suzanne will love me for my love of Roll-and Rights, I am not much of a pie person, only because a lot of pies are fruit-based, and I'm weird about cooked fruit. I like other pies that are not fruit-based, like, or that aren't like, I don't know, I don't like apple pie or cherry pie. I like, a French silk pie, or like a strawberry pie, because the strawberries aren't cooked, it's just in there. But yeah, pineapple and pizza, not so much. Someone asked if I watched the Orville. I have not seen the Orville. Seth MacFarlane is not my fave for a number of reasons. I have heard good things about the Orville from a number of people, and I will probably end up checking it out at some point, but I have not yet. Let's see. People are not happy about the way the Klingons look in Discovery. I will admit it was weird to me at first as well. I think the actors who are playing Klingons maybe struggled early on with the prosthetics and learning how to speak and emote through the prosthetics, but I think that they've done a really good job of getting better at that. So I think it's okay now. It is 10:22, so we've got about 8 more minutes, and then I'm going to wrap things up. Am I going to the Dice Tower retreat? I am not going to the retreat. So I was at Dice Tower Con in July. I'm going to be going to BGG Con in November, and I'm going to go on the Dice Tower cruise in January. So going to Florida in December is not an option for me. Unfortunately, I only have so many days off I can take from work, and I'm already stretching those pretty thin with all this other stuff that I'm doing. So I will not be going on the retreat in December this year, but maybe at some point in the future, if they do it again, I might be doing that. So, but I will be on the cruise in January. If anyone's going on the cruise, I'm very excited about that. Let's see. I started my own meetup after moving to Las Vegas. Did I talk it up at my usual game nights to build members, or was it a slow build up? What's interesting, I didn't actually start the meetup. It already existed. I joined it, and then after a certain amount of time had passed, I was one of the long-time members, and the person who had been running it had to step away, and so they asked me to kind of take control of that meetup group. So I kind of fumbled my way into it, so to speak. Yes. So since the Dice Tower Cruise is in January, I unfortunately will not be going to OrcaCon. That one was on my short list of cons that I would have loved to have gone to, but I'm not going to be able to, unfortunately. I do want to go to OrcaCon at some point. It sounds lovely. I'm very excited to try it out at some point. But okay, it looks like I've gotten through most of the questions. If I did not read your question, I apologize. I tried to get to most of them. I don't think I skipped any intentionally. I may have accidentally passed over some while I was scrolling through things. So as far as this show, Board Game Brunch, is concerned, it will primarily be a Q&A session with me, so you all can get to know me or ask me any questions, stuff you want to know about what's going on with me as a gamer. But again, I'm open to changing the format, having guests on, maybe playing some games online on Board Game Arena and having you all maybe play with me or watch me play or whatever. I don't really know what I want this show to be yet, and I figured let's just start it off with a simple Q&A. So if you have any suggestions or any questions you'd like me to answer in an upcoming show, feel free to email me, crystal@dicetower.com, and I can put them in the next episode. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, I'm open to whatever. Someone said, I don't understand why this isn't called live Q&A with Crystal like everyone else's Q&A segments. It's not a show like Board Game Breakfast or Board Game Blender. That's true. Tom actually wanted Z to name his show Board Game Brunch because it fits in with the whole food theme. And Z didn't want to do that. Z wanted Board Game Blender. And I asked Tom if I could call this Board Game Brunch because it happens on a Sunday morning. And I plan on doing things other than Q&A with it, and he was fine with that. So that's the reason it's Board Game Brunch. Who knows? If I end up doing Q&A only in the future, we could change the name. But for now, I wanted to give it a little bit more personality than just Q&A, and I wanted to leave it open for the possibility of bringing in other content creators or other content in general. So that is why it's Brunch for now, but it could change. You never know. Star Trek the Motion Picture, hate it or love it. I'm somewhere in the middle, but probably slightly closer to hate than love, only because it's very, very slow. It's not a horrible movie, but the plot moves very slowly. And yeah. Tom has a food obsession with games. I mean, who doesn't love food? Who doesn't love games? You can't blame him for that, right? Okay, oh wait, I'll answer one more. Horse-sized hamster or hamster-sized horse? A hamster-sized horse would be the most adorable thing ever, right? Tiny little horse that you can hold in your hands. Definitely that. All right, with that very serious question, I guess I will go ahead and end the stream. Thank you all for watching, and thank you for joining me for this first ever Q&A solo by myself. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back next month, final Sunday of the month at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and I hope that you will join me then. Otherwise, you can check out all the other content that's coming from the Dice Tower and the Dice Tower Network, and you will see me again on Dice Tower tonight, not this coming Wednesday, but next Wednesday with Tom and Eric, and I'm sure they will have lots of exciting things to report back from Gen Con, and maybe I'll get to share some of my experiences from the Star Trek convention that I am attending this week in Las Vegas. But that's going to be all for now, folks. So thank you for watching. This has been Board Game Brunch, a live Q&A with Crystal, and I will see you all later. Bye.